All right, everyone, welcome to the third episode of Finance with Ferg. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the YouTube recording, so no one's actually tuning in. You're just watching me after the fact. I would assume that most of you signed up for these sessions, for these episodes, for this reason. It's what I typically find with this is that most people are either looking to get started with investing, open up an account, just kind of figure out what their options are, what they can do. How does it work? So that's what this episode is, focusing on the beginnings and the basics of investing. Would highly recommend, if that is why you've come, to also make sure you check out next week's episode. We will be focusing on investing here today. Next week, we will be focusing on the TFSA and the RRSP. They go hand in hand here in Canada. It's pretty tough to have one without the other. You'll find out next week, and you'll find out in this episode why that is. So moving along here, just talking about some housekeeping. Going to burn through these, as you guys already know if you watched these before. We've got 8 episodes over a number of different topics. They are obviously recorded. You're watching this on YouTube now. If you want to check out some quick little memes, some quick little videos, me photoshopping my face poorly onto some popular memes with some financial education, edutainment, as I've heard it be called, which I really like, so I'm stealing that. You can check me out on Facebook or Instagram. You can see my handle at the bottom of every page. These are great for all Canadians. Now, normally the sessions are at 8 p.m. Eastern, so that's why I say best for Ontarians and Albertans, and also I'm licensed to work in those provinces, so a little bit of a pitch for myself there. But yeah, these are great for most or all Canadians. Might be a little bit different from province to province, but for the most part, these are good. Now, what are we actually going to be talking about today? I'm going to show you some of the typical Canadian investment vehicles that you guys can start taking advantage of, or maybe you already are taking advantage of. My favorite part of this episode of the entire season, cardboard investing for dummies. Now you're fired up because how great it sounds. I'm going to talk about investing versus savings, when it makes sense to do one or the other. I'm going to go over some key terms, some words, some terms that you've probably heard before. Maybe you didn't know what it meant, or maybe you just want some clarification. We're going to go over that too. Gonna make some analogies, because if you know me, or if you've been on Finance with Ferg, I love me a good analogy. So we're gonna go get some groceries. No questions for you, unless you want to throw it in the comments section, and if I check the comments section, I'll go back and I'll try to answer it. But of course, you can just message me on Instagram. My contact info will be on that last page. Feel free to reach out to me there. Now, here are 6 of the typical Canadian investment vehicles. These are the places that most of us are probably either going to have our money in, trying to grow our wealth, or we can start looking into to grow our wealth. Okay? Now, not gonna read through everything here. Feel free to pause the video and kind of take a look at what I'm doing. Throw it into Google. It'll probably be able to explain what I'm talking about here. Or reach out, obviously. But I'm going to explain a couple things. So on the left here, I've got home. Now, I am not personally talking, I'm not talking about the home you live in, right? I don't really see that as a great investment vehicle. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. The value of homes have been going up. This is where everybody has now turned off the video because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. Just kidding, please don't. No, I'm under that like rich dad, poor dad mindset, where I don't think the home you live in is necessarily the best investment for a number of reasons, but which I'm not going to go into today. But what I'm speaking about here is more of like, you're buying real estate to have renters in. You're buying real estate with the sole purpose of flipping it and getting a return on it. That's kind of what I'm talking about there. And then on the end, a very lesser known investment vehicle is through permanent insurance. So I will have a dedicated episode later on comparing the different insurance types that are out there for you. Mainly though, there's 2 main types. There's the term insurance. This is the stuff that most of us would know about. Term 10, term 20, term 30, you're paying a monthly rate to be covered for that amount of time, for a certain amount of money. Once that time passes, that payout is no longer there, your payments stop, you don't get any money back. In a permanent policy, there's a couple of different names for this, but a permanent policy along with you're covered for life. So there's no time frame. You're covered for life. And what it does is some of your money goes to cover the insurance so that you do get a payout should you pass, or like your beneficiaries get a payout if you pass away. But a lot of it, or some of it, shouldn't say a lot of it, some of it does go into an investment portion as well, similar to an RRSP in the sense that it's growing tax deferred. And what you can do is you can actually use this as supplemental income later in life, right? Like it can supplement your retirement. What also can happen, the cool thing about permanent policy, and again, I'll go into much more detail on a later episode. Later in life, you can actually cancel these policies, even though you're covered for life. You can cancel it should you decide you don't want it anymore, and you can actually get, depending on when you cancel it, all or more than all of the money you've ever put into it. So it's pretty darn cool. But these are going to be the main ones that you guys would want to focus on. I will have an episode on insurance. I will have an episode next week on RRSPs and TFSAs. I will have an episode later on about RESPs and RDSPs because these are the main areas of concern for us in personal finance here in Canada. Okay. Now, again, my favorite slide in the entire season, investing for cardboard dummies. Why is it my favorite slide, you ask? Well, it's the dumbest, most simplest analogy I could think of for how the relationship between investments and accounts work, okay? Because like I said, you can't have one without the other. So, I want you to think of that cardboard box. I'm talking about the outer shell, not the inner grid. Think of the outside of the box or the box as the account, right? Like your TFSA or your RRSP. And then on the inside, you've got this grid. You've got these slots. Now, these slots are in the account, right? The investments are in the account. So if you want to buy an investment, not only does it need to go into the slot, but because they're one and the same, they're not one and the same, but because they're combined, they're together, it's also got to go into the box. It's the same thing with investments. If you want to buy a stock, a bond, a fund, you need to open an account. The money needs to go into the account, and then it needs to go into an investment through that account. Just like this. It needs to go into the slot, which is already in the box. Okay? Now, you can choose as few or as many slots as you want, or as your money can afford, right? You can have one here, there, all over the place. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. Here's the differences between the TFSA box and the RRSP box. The TFSA box, you can kind of think of it as staying open, right? Flaps open, flaps closed. You can pull money out. You can put money in. Pretty willy-nilly. Right? You have more freedom. You don't really get penalized. You don't really get taxed. There's a contribution limit, which we'll talk about next week. But for the most part, it's a pretty fluid account. Okay? You have the ability to pull the money out. With the RRSP, though, you don't want to pull the money out. You can think of it as there's that little, your trash can, how it's got that pedal on it to open up and close. Well, you can step on, the same thing here. You can step on this pedal, open the box, throw your money into the RRSP, pick the slots. But when you take your foot off, the box closes, you can't pull your money out. Or at least you shouldn't, right? The RRSP is for long-term investing. The idea is you are saving for your retirement if you're investing in an RRSP. Now, there are 2 times you can take it out. We'll cover that next week. It's the home buyer's plan and the lifelong learning plan. For the most part, though, you want to use your RRSP for long-term retirement savings, okay? Last little tidbit I'll give you is how is everybody using their TFSA and RRSP today? Well, let me tell you. Let's use this box again because it's great and I love it and I'll always use it for the rest of my life. Most people have the box. Most people have the ability to put money into the slots, but most people open the box. They lay their money on top of the slots without ever actually putting them in. So what they're doing in the real world, they're opening the account, they're putting money into the account, but they're not actually buying any investments. You're not invested just because you're in the TFSA or the RRSP. You need to open the account and buy investments through the account. That is how those accounts are supposed to be used. I hate the S in the TFSA and the RRSP. I wish it were an I, because those aren't savings accounts or savings plans. Those are investment accounts, and investment plans. I'm writing a petition to the government of Canada to change those as we speak. Obviously, I'm not. Here are my hands. But I really think they poorly named those accounts, in my opinion. Moving along, right? Let's talk about when you should save versus when you should invest, because it's not cut and dry that you should always save or you should always invest. There are different times and there are different reasons why you'd want to do one or the other. Let's talk about some of them. Okay, let's look at time frame, right? When are you actually going to need that money? When do you plan on pulling it out? Good rule of thumb, we have many rules of thumb in finance. If you need the money in less than 2 years, you should probably save it, right? We don't want to take on the risk of the stock market. We don't want to risk our money going down. And within 2 years, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. So let's just keep the money in a savings account for now. It can actually be in a TFSA. It can be in an RSP. Just don't choose the investments, okay? Just leave it there. If it's 5 years plus, you're probably good to invest. That's enough time frame. That's a large enough time frame where you can deal with the dips and you can make them up with the peaks. And over time, it'll probably trend out towards a peak. Now, I'm not saying let's focus on 5-year investments. It can be. 5's kind of the starting point, but like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40. Long-term investing, yeah, you definitely want to invest, okay? But yeah, what about 2 to 5, right? I heard you in the back there. Thank you very much. 2 to 5 really depends, right? Depends on your goals, depends on what you're needing the money for. I'd say talk to someone, talk to a professional, do some Googling. You got to figure that out kind of on your own, what's best for you. Otherwise, you kind of want to follow this this time frame or these rules, okay? Have you paid off your debt, right? Are your high interest debts paid off? Is your credit card paid off? Is that 20, 30, 40% loan or whatever you've got paid off? If so, start investing, right? It's time for your money to start making you money rather than just pay off the other money you borrow. If you haven't paid off your high interest debts, I think you need to prioritize, it says save here, but I think you need to prioritize paying off your debts, okay? Now, on the flippity flop, if it's a low interest debt, like a mortgage, like a great rate line of credit, I'm coining that, if I ever come up with a line of credit, it's called the great rate line of credit, then you might want to invest while you're paying that off. So perfect example, you got a 19% credit card with 10 grand on it. What should you do? Pay off the credit card, because it is very, very hard to find an investment that's going to make you more than 19%. What if you've got a mortgage at 3%? Should you lump sum all your extra money into the mortgage, or should you start prioritizing investing? Well, if you've checked out my other episodes, you'll know that on a low interest debt, you should plan to pay off whatever the set limit is or the lowest amount, and then start prioritizing investing. You basically want to put your money in the place that has the highest percentage. So a credit card has a 19% number, pay off the credit card. Line of credit, the mortgage only has a 3%. So you're going to pay it off, but you're not putting all your money there. If you've got the mortgage and an 8% investment, rate of return on your investment, that's where you want to prioritize the extra money. Put the money towards the highest percent. Okay. Last thing is here, do you have an emergency fund, right? I find this is often overlooked. You really, really should have an emergency fund. Even if it's in your TFSA, that's better than nothing. But definitely have an emergency, and I'm talking about like just sitting in your TFSA. But you definitely need to have an emergency fund, right? If you do, great. Time to start investing. If you don't, save that money for an emergency fund, okay? Rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months. So if you were laid off and you couldn't work, you want to make sure that you can cover all your bills, all your expenses, groceries, phone, gas, mortgage, etc., for 3 to 6 months. Once you've got that built up, now you can start investing, okay? The other thing, I said last in the last one, I misspoke. The other thing, do you understand the risks of both investing and saving? And I know you're probably thinking, risks of saving? What the heck are you talking about? Who is this guy? I should have turned the camera off the last time he said something crazy. Real estate's not an investment. Hear me out. Please keep the YouTube on. The YouTube, man, I sound like my dad now. Keep the video on. There is risk in both, right? You can see here, you can see the pros and cons of both savings and investing. The idea being, the obvious risk with investing is that you can lose your money, right? Now, a very common misconception is that, oh, I don't want to get in the stock market. There's the risk of losing all my money. There is the risk, but it's the same risk of dying the second you step out of bed. It's there, very low that it's going to happen. Why that is because when I talk about this, I'm talking about like smart investing, long-term investing, fund investing. If you're a high-risk individual stock buyer, yeah, there is a real risk of losing all your money. But if you're investing into a fund by dollar cost averaging, which I'll talk about in a second, basically putting the same amount of money into your investment account every month, the risk of losing all your money is incredibly low. And I'll show you why here in a second. The other thing here, why saving is a risky option, is due to inflation. And what inflation is the rising cost of goods, which means everything around us costs more money. What that means is your buying power, or the value of your money today, is less than it would be tomorrow. What that means is when you've got money just sitting in a savings account, with the current inflation rate, it's being eaten up at a rate of 4.8%. You're losing that. You can't, what's happening is everything else is getting that much more expensive, but your money hasn't gotten that much more valuable. All right? And as you can see on the bottom there, the best, and now this is from last year, so some of these numbers might be a little bit different, but the best high interest savings account in Canada is only 1.75%. That's not even beating inflation. So for some people that brag, oh, my savings account gets me 1.75%. Sorry, Bob, but I know you lost 4.8 due to inflation. That don't impress me much, okay? Here's what impresses me, and this is why I actually think saving is more risky than investing. Look at these four pictures, okay? The top two and then the bottom left corner. Let me get my laser pointer if I can. Can I do that on a recording? Oh boy, howdy can I. These two are indexes. This is an index. This is inflation. Sorry, my beautiful face is cutting it off here. But I want to show you why saving is actually more risky than investing. So all of this is the value. All this is showing is that what would happen since 1981 if you had put $10,000 into these, okay, into these investments or into this savings account. And you didn't buy anything else, you didn't contribute any more money, you didn't sell, you didn't trade, you didn't move, you just put money into a fund that tracked the S&P 500 or that tracked the Dow Jones or that tracked the TSX. These are indexes. I'll explain what that is later. Or what this unfortunate soul did is they just left it into a savings account. They didn't invest it, they didn't buy anything, they just left it sitting there. Put it in the sock under their bed. What would have happened? Well, for the S&P 500 person, that $10,000 over 40 years would have turned into $306,000, nearly a 3,000% return. Madness. The Dow Jones individual, that's not what the I stands for, it just happens to work out. The Dow Jones individual would have made a return of 3,200% for a total of $330,000 in their investment. Madness. The TSX, a little bit slower. This is the Canadian index, the Toronto index, Toronto Stock Exchange index here. That money would have gone up to $87,300. Again, madness. I'll take that any day of the week. This poor chump that had their money in a sock under the bed in the high interest savings account, just being ripped off by inflation, their money, their $10,000, is now only worth $3,100. Which in today's meaning, if the car normally cost $10,000, they could have bought it, but because this has happened, inflation's eaten their money, now they can only afford a $3,100 car. Even though it's $10,000, they'll only be able to buy that $3,100 car. Madness. Crazy. This is why I always recommend people, please don't be afraid of investing. It's actually scarier to not invest. All right. Now you know why. The more you know. Oh, why can't I change this slide with a pointer? Okay, I'll have to do it the old. Let's talk about some of those investment terms. Okay, you've probably heard a lot of these. If you haven't, You will now. But these are going to be very common terms that the average Canadian, the average investor, not the guy sitting in front of 10 daisy-chained monitors, trading and selling and buying and all that stuff. This is that normal investor just throwing money every month into the same investment, into an account, doing it the smart way, doing it the easy way. Okay? What's a stock? A stock is an investment representing ownership in a company, also known as equity. This is a high-risk, high-return investment. What does this mean? You probably hear a lot about Apple stock. If you buy Apple stock, you are buying a share in that company. You have part ownership in that company, right? When they make money, you make money. When they lose money, you lose money. Okay? You get to vote. You get to help make decisions. You get a stake. You get a say in what happens in that company. It's kind of cool. That's a stock. An index, right? I just showed you 3 of them. An index tracks the performance. I guess I don't need this anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. An index tracks the performance of many investments as a measuring stick for a particular investment. So basically what it does is an index takes a look at a number of different stocks, kind of bundles them all together and averages them, and it shows this group of stocks performs like this. What it does is it tracks against other investments. Okay, so there are tech investments, there are real estate investments, there are raw materials, there's energy. The index is going to track, you're going to be able to track how your investments are doing in those areas against how that index is tracking them. Okay? Excuse me. A fund simply is a group of investments. It can be stocks, can be bonds, etc. You've probably heard of mutual fund, right? It's another type. Well, it is a fund, right? Mutual fund is a type of fund. There's also segregated funds, which is very similar to a mutual fund provided by insurance companies. These are medium risk, medium return, right? Now, even though there are stocks in there, why is it less than high? Why is it medium? Well, you're spreading your risk because you've got many investments. You're also including some low risk, low return investments in there, which brings it down. So that's why this is a medium risk, medium return. Okay, a bond. Sure, you've heard. I think more people have heard of this than funds, but anyway, a bond is kind of like an IOU issued by a corporation or a government, which says, Ryan, I'm the government. Well, that's a bad analogy. Government says, Ryan, give me $10,000 today. I will give you $11,000 in 20 years. That's a bond. Okay. Someone is giving you the promise that we'll give you more money if you give me money today, because we're going to go build roads, we're going to go build schools, we're going to use your money for whatever we want. Maybe we're going to invest it. I don't know. That's what a bond is. Okay, these are very low. Well, not very. These are low risk, low return. Okay, a GIC is a guaranteed investment certificate. Kind of similar. Give me some money, I'll give you a return. These are very low risk, very low return. Okay, the rate of return is the amount your money has gone up or down. So you hear me talk about 8% rate of return a lot. What that means is your money has gone up 8%. Okay, if it's a positive percent, your money's gone up. If it's a negative percent, your money's gone down. Capital gain, right? If you're familiar with real estate, you've probably heard of capital gain a lot. The capital gain is the difference between the purchase price and the selling price. So if you buy an investment for 100 grand, you sell it 10 years later for 150, your capital gain is the difference, 50 grand. Okay. I think on a previous episode, which I didn't record, I will record and put it up later, the tax episode, we talk about how capital gains are taxed. Okay. Dividend. What's a dividend? I'm sure you've heard that too. A payout of a portion of the company's profit paid to shareholders. What that means is if you're invested, not only are you getting, like, as the company makes money, like, not only are you getting the rate of return that way, but the company's also paying you additionally just for being an investor. Thank you, Ryan, for investing in our company. Here's a quarterly dividend. Okay? This is a passive way to make income. Now, don't get me wrong, you need to have a ton of money to make dividends really make sense, in my opinion. I would say ramp up the growth orientation of your investments and just make more in the rate of return, because dividends don't pay out very much. But That's my train of thought. You're on Finance with Ferg, so all you get is my train of thought. Registered account. It is an investment account that is given tax-deferred or tax-sheltered status by the government. What does that mean? Think of the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, Registered Education Savings Plan. It's not in the name, but the TFSA. These are accounts that the government has decided we're going to give tax benefits to your money, to you, for your money, if you invest in these accounts. Okay? I've talked about it on the tax episode. I'll be talking about it next week on the TFSA RRSP episode as well. Okay? A non-registered account, basically everything else, right? It's an investment account without limits. Can be tax deferred, tax sheltered. There aren't many tax benefits to it, but these also have more flexibility, more liquidity. You have more control in these. Okay? You've probably heard of these terms. If you haven't, here you go. A bear market is when the market's trending down. A bull market is when the market's trending up. You might hear Kramer on Mad Money go, we got a bearish market, and it makes a bear sound, or yeah, we're feeling bullish about this. Bear market's when it's going down. If someone says, yeah, I'm bearish, they think it's going down, or it's trending down. Bullish, they think it's going up, it's trending up. How can you remember this? Think of the animal. How does a bear attack? It swipes down, right? It claws across your body, swipes down. Market's going down. A bull bucks its head, hits you with its horns, going up. Bear, swipe down. Bull, buck up. Okay? Dollar cost averaging. I mentioned this earlier in the call. This is investing the same amount of money at regular intervals over an extended period of time. I recommend this, right? This is the safest way to invest. Constantly putting in money. You avoid the dips, you avoid the peaks because you're constantly going in. This is the best way for the average Canadian to invest. Okay? A MER, it's a fee, right? So you hear Questrade, Wealthsimple, stop paying the fees. They're talking about the management expense ratio, right? What it is, it's a management fee. It's the cost of investing through an advisor or a platform or utilizing a fund manager. I will talk about this later on in our sessions of why I don't think fees matter. And I'll give you some hard numbers to show you why. But anyway, that's what a MER is, a management expense ratio, the cost of investing. All right. And then finally, what is risk? It's the amount of volatility in an investment. Yes, it can be considered the risk that you lose your money. It's not typically what it means in the finance world. When you talk about risk, you're kind of talking about how much it's going to go up, how much it's going to go down, how often that'll happen as well. Okay. Moving right along here to our second last slide before we get into the questions that no one's going to ask because it's just me on this call. Let's talk about the grocery market. And funny enough, the grocery market uses the same term as the stock market. It's a market. It's a place where you can go to buy things. So let's look at the grocery market as if it were the stock market. Okay. You've got the super tasty, super sexy, colorful, pretty fruit. That's your stocks. You've got the maybe a little bit more boring, but you know you need to have them because they're good for you and they balance out your diet like they would balance out your portfolio. You got your vegetables, which are kind of like your bonds. Then you got other things in there, but let me kind of show you how this fits. So you can go and buy one strawberry, one apple, one peach, one pear, one kiwi, one lime, one lemon, one apple, one banana. I can go on for days. I know my fruits. You can go buy one of each. Or you can buy a box of strawberries. You can buy a bunch of apples. You can buy a bag of lemons. You can buy a bag of lemons and a bag of apples and a box of strawberries. You can do all those things with stocks, meaning you can buy one stock from each company. You can buy multiple stocks from this or multiple shares from the same company. It's your call. On the bond side, you can go grab a cucumber. You can go grab an eggplant. You can go grab a cauliflower. You can go grab a broccoli. You can go grab a tomatoes of fruit. Ha! Almost caught me, but I know my fruits. Nice try. You can go buy any number of vegetables, potatoes, same idea. You can buy a bunch of them. You can buy one of each. It's your call. Here's a fun little thing. You can buy pre-cut vegetable or pre-cut fruit. You can buy pre-cut vegetables as well. You can buy pre-cut fruit. You can find that nice little tray with the marshmallow dip in the middle or the chocolate dip. You got some cantaloupe, some strawberries, some pineapple. Don't sleep on the cantaloupe. It's the best fruit in there. Don't at me. You can buy that pre-packaged, pre-cut, ready to go. That's kind of like a fund. It'd be like a fund of stocks. Okay? ETF, a fund of stocks. You can kind of think of that pre-packaged fruit as that. Somebody has gone out and pre-packaged a bunch of great fruit or a bunch of great stocks and has made it available for you to purchase. Same with the vegetables. You can do that with bonds too. A group of bonds that you can purchase takes the stress out of doing a bunch of the research, or at least as much research, to figure out what's the right fit. Now, the grocery market doesn't do this, coming up here in a second, but the stock market does, and the industry does. They're actually going to mix the fruit with the vegetables, give you some of this with a little bit of that. That is a typical mutual fund, right? A mutual fund will have a bit of bonds, a bit of stocks, a bit of other investments to give you a balanced portfolio to help manage risk, to help keep your money trending in the right direction without having too many dips in the wrong direction. Okay? I just made this up tonight. I think it went pretty well. Let me know in the comments if you like the grocery market and stock market comparison. But guys, with that being said, that is it. Here is my contact info. Feel free to send me a message, give me a call, shoot me a note, like, comment, or post on one of my social medias. Would love to hear from you guys. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.